Well, you guys are awesome. You really are. You have taken a day out of your lives, a Saturday out of your lives, to come here and focus on your life's purpose, and that deserves celebration. So let's take a minute, pat yourself on the back, pat your neighbor on the back. You are part of probably the top 5% of the most focused individuals in the whole Pasadena area. You're clearly well on your path to purpose. So I'm really honored to build on the work that Pina has done with you all around choice and Cheryl on intention as we add one more dimension, one more tool that might help to kind of turbocharge your life's purpose. So this afternoon, for these final couple of minutes, we're going to focus on focus. Focus is one of those characteristics that's held in incredibly high esteem in our society and in business. You know, we medicate, we caffeinate, we meditate to summon it. It's celebrated on billboards, in books, in workshops. Those among us who possess that holy grail of focus, you know, they're the successful ones, the role models to everyone else. And those who don't, well, you know, maybe they just need to work a little harder, right? Wrong. And I am uniquely qualified to tell you exactly why that's wrong. I know a thing or two about focus. In fact, I've been kind of the poster child for the cause for most of my life. I nearly came out of the womb focused. At a very early age, I tapped into this laser-like drive to achieve. And it was probably in the DNA. My dad, when he was in 6th grade, had to drop out of school to support his family, his 5 siblings, his mom, and his dad who had been injured in the war. So at age 12, he started his working career. You know, talk about focus. Over the course of the years, he found a trade. He became a printer. And he found my mom and started our family. And some of my clearest early memories are of very serious conversations in our household. My parents, like so many parents, wanted to give more to their kids than they had had, particularly when it came to education. That was essential to them. And yet, a printer's wages didn't go terribly far. My parents had this vision of moving to a home in a good neighborhood, in a good community with an excellent school district. And they crafted a plan to deliver on that vision. And here's how it was going to go. Dad was going to get a second full-time job to be able to fund the vision. Mom was going to learn how to drive to be able to transport the vision. And at 4 or 5 years old, my role in all of this was to help a little bit more with my baby brother and keep my room tidy. Now, it's taken years for me to figure out the room tidy thing. Had nothing to do with the whole move into the new neighborhood. It was just a bonus they negotiated in the process. Be that as it may, we all got focused. That's what was going to be required to pull this plan off. So pretty soon, Dad got that second full-time job and started a schedule that I have to say is unfathomable to me today. But all the time I was growing up, it's just how it was. Before I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, Dad was already out of the house on his way to job number 1. And long after I had gone to bed at night, well after midnight, he came back from job number 2. The man was focused. And before long, we were moving into that new house in that great neighborhood with the good schools. And on moving day, I set an intention. I decided at that point I needed to get focused, that I needed to make sure that their investment, that their sacrifices paid off. I needed to make them proud. I, too, was going to be focused. And in my 5-year-old little brain, focused equated to serious somehow. So my first order of business was to shed myself of my childish addiction to cartoons, because clearly that was not focused. So one Saturday morning, I was sitting there watching them, and I just remembered deciding, you know, today's the day. It's now or never, people. And so I took a deep breath, and I got up, and I went over to the television, which is something we used to have to do to change the channel, and flipped it to the news. Cold turkey from that day forward. No more Tom and Jerry for this little 5-year-old, because I was focused. I took my focused little self off to kindergarten, where I took my job really seriously. I was on a mission to learn to read and write as quickly as possible. And there was nothing that was going to get in my way. If I was sick, Mom had to go and get me my kindergarten homework because I wasn't going to fall behind. I was focused. And it served me well. I earned straight A's through high school and through junior high school, if you ignore that B+ from Mrs. Thurman in art. And it all paid off. I went to my first choice college. And because of my hard work in high school, I was on a fast track. I was going to get my degree in 3 years because I was focused. I put in play everything that had worked for me to date and got through the first year relatively well. Second year, a November morning, cold, dreary one, not unlike this morning, I wake up in my cold dorm room. Normally, I'm one to jump out of bed, and I was laying there unable to get out of bed. And I remember thinking, gosh, it wasn't that late at night. I don't think there was a party. And yet I couldn't will the limbs to move. I just knew I couldn't do it any longer. And so for several days, I kind of stayed in bed. I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, I didn't go to classes. Pretty soon, my roommate got a little concerned and insisted that I go over to the medical center, which I did, and I was proclaimed perfectly fine, which I wasn't, because I went back and it continued. Now, as you can imagine, college administrators, they kind of frown on that behavior. So pretty soon I found myself back home, doing the same thing, not eating, not sleeping, not doing anything. And though this time I'm being drugged around to doctors who decided that it was maybe exhaustion or depression or perhaps anxiety. My favorite was the nervous breakdown. I was 19 years old. So in retrospect, probably a more accurate diagnosis would have been something like acute focus or pathological drive. But we didn't know that at the time. All I knew is that I was sitting on the sidelines, watching my peers who didn't seem like they cared nearly as much as I did. They sure weren't working as hard as I had. And I knew for certain they were not as focused as I was. And yet, they were graduating on time. And what for me started out as a 3-year journey to my degree ultimately took another 20 for me to achieve. And you know why? You guessed it. It's because I was focused. What I've really come to appreciate is that success isn't about the absence or the presence of focus in one's life. It's really about the nature of the focus. And mine, it was completely unsustainable. You know, I hit some of the milestones, but I missed the big deadline. I won some of the battles, but the important war was lost. As a society, we're beginning to embrace the importance of sustainability around the environment, business, energy. But we also have to think about the sustainability of our personal energy when it comes to the focus that we deploy against our goals and our vision and our purpose in life. Unfortunately, many of us, as a result of our upbringing and school and business experiences, we've honed a potentially dangerous form of focus, what I refer to as forced focus. And you know you've mastered this one when you find yourself frequently delaying getting that drink of water or running off to the bathroom until you do just one more thing. You know what I'm talking about. You know, when discipline becomes not just your middle name, but your first and last name as well. I mean, ask yourself for a minute, what does focus feel like to you? When I talk to people about this, I hear words like discipline and drive and determination and force of will. And I know for myself in my own life, no matter how wonderfully joyous my goals might have been, it always felt like a forced death march to achieving them. And forced death marches, by their very nature, not sustainable. But let's step back and look at definitions for a second, because according to physics, focus is nothing more than the point where rays of light converge. Rays of light. They're not heavy and hard and firm and immobile. They're light. They're energy. They're dancing. What if we could experience focus like that? What if we stopped beating ourselves up and forcing our way down our paths and let the light and the lightness carry us instead? What if we really could tap into a sustainable and softer, not a harder focus in service of our purpose and our goals? Now, I'm not talking about getting lazy and sitting back and letting your purpose take care of itself. Not that any of you who've chosen to be here today would likely fall prey to that. But what I am talking about is finding that place of joy and fun and receptivity where the lightness can clear the path and really enable the persistence and the rigor that's required to realize our results. In those 20 years of on-again, off-again college, I learned some hard lessons about my hard focus. And what I know today to be an absolute fact is that focus is not sustainable until or unless we figure out how to elevate the process that we're going through, the path that we're on, to the same level as that purpose and the goal that we're pursuing. You've heard that expression, the ends can't justify the means. The ends can't sustain the means either. Many of us have big, wild, audacious goals. And let's face it, we might not be here to see them realized. I think about my dad, who passed away years before I ever got that degree. Now, maybe just getting me through high school was a win from his standpoint. Maybe those 18-hour days had more joy than I ever witnessed. But from my perspective, his was a hard, heavy focus that didn't pay off in time or in the way he deserved. But you know, even when we are there to see the fruits of our labor, our goals realized, achievement is so fleeting. Earlier this year, I published a book, and it was one of those big goals and big achievements for me. It was a big deal. And I got to tell you, I was thrilled. First time I saw the book on a bookshelf in a store, I was so tickled. I scribbled my name in there and danced around like a little girl. And when it hit #1 in its Amazon category, I mean, we celebrated like nobody's business. It was great. But then it was over. And I was still just me. Now with a book under my arm, going off to my next goal. You know, if I hadn't had a blast along the way, I might well have ended up back in bed, depressed, anxious, not eating and sleeping all over again. You cross the finish line in the blink of an eye. So you better have something to show for it in terms of real pleasure along the path. So how do you add joy to the journey? Well, start first by sprinkling in liberally the things you love every day with the people you love every day. Celebrate the small stuff. Don't wait for the big achievements. Have fun. Take up a hobby. Step back and step away from the work that's required to achieve your goals. You know, sometimes the time you waste is exactly the softness that you need to be able to stick with something even longer. Sometimes we've got to slow down in order to ultimately go faster and farther in life. So as we wrap up this terrific day together, let me just say this to you. Your purpose, your goals, they are vitally important. Not just to you, but to a world that's waiting for and that needs your contributions and your achievement. You can't afford to burn out before you deliver those, and you don't have to. Today, make a commitment to tapping into that sustainable, that softer rather than harder focus. Find that place where the joy and the receptivity and the fun clear the way and enable the rigor that you need to realize your results. Replace burnout with an approach that will burn strong throughout the course of your life. Whatever you do, don't work too hard. Don't focus too hard. Focus softly. Focus sustainably. And ease into the life you envision. Thank you.